Hello everybody, my name is Chris. I'm very excited today to show you guys the S62 motor that we're going to be putting in my E39 wagon. And I'm going to show you everything that's already been done on the motor, as well as talk about some of the plans for what we're going to be doing on it. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, we're going to be transplanting a motor in this E39 Touring right here. This is part of my M5 conversion on the full car. Obviously, we're also doing the drive shaft and the rear end. So the whole car is going to be an M5 converted wagon. In fact, here's a picture of the E39 M5 that I bought. Now, I did actually purchase this car out of state. I flew to Atlanta, was rebuilt title. So I'm not doing the world a disgrace by taking away a good M5 from a collector's hands, but rather this was a rebuilt title. This car had been in an accident and I prefer to have clean title cars, so I figured why not purchase this M5 to use it to swap into this wagon right here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the motor that I have right behind me, some of the pieces, and talk about why I chose to put an S62 motor into my E39 wagon. Now, the obvious answer, I think, is the simplest one, and that's that this would be an easy swap. The E39 Touring front end was very similar to the sedan, and the chassis is exactly the same. Hey, Goose, what's up, bud? So the chassis is exactly the same. Everything fits over. So I've already transferred the front subframe from the E39, and now we just need to get the drivetrain in, as well as some of the pieces in the rear. One of the next steps is going to be working on the rear subframe to get the differentials bushing in, and then putting the differential and the axles in. So I'll be showing you guys that later. Now, the S62 is a really special motor to me as well because it is a race motor. It was used by a couple of teams like PTG and Turner Motorsport for some endurance racing. I'll throw a couple pictures here. This is a high-performing engine, but it has its drawbacks in terms of reliability. But I think that as long as you are aware and you handle them in the correct order, the correct sequence, then you should really never have an issue with your M5 motor. In this series, we're going to be talking about those drawbacks, such as the rod bearing issue and the timing chain guides, and we'll be addressing some stuff later like the Vanos rebuild. So now I'm going to show you some facts about the motor, such as the compression ratio and some specs that you might be interested into. This engine came at 400 crank horsepower from the factory. And obviously I would consider that to be down-tuned from its full potential. It also has high flowing heads, an aluminum alloy block, 11:1 compression ratio, individual throttle bodies. Now, so far what's been done on this block, we've honed the cylinders out. You can't see them here because I've taped up the motor to keep dust from getting into the top, where it'd be very important. I don't have the oil pan on yet, but we have that covered in the meantime. All this engine work was done for us by C.W. Pence, located in Maitland, Florida. They did a really good job of making sure that every single piece that went into this build was correct and aligned with the power goals and the long-term goals that we have for this build, such as new piston rings, which were custom sized, and the cylinders were honed. Now, these are an alu-sil cylinder type, so there's a special honing technique that goes along with that. And I figured for sake of time and professionalism, I wanted a machine shop to handle the internal work, and then I would handle reassembly and timing. Now let's go ahead and look at the underside of the engine, where a lot of the impressive stuff is going on. Now, big shout out to VAC Motorsports, who hooked us up with the coated rod bearings. I thought that would be a perfect upgrade over the factory ones, because the factory rod bearings are known to have longevity issues, and they'll typically wear down to the copper, which is bad. You'll see the shavings in the oil. With this motor having 120,000 miles, I figured it'd be a good time and a good opportunity to replace all the main bearings, all of the rod bearings, the rod bolts, the crank bolts, and everything on the bottom end, just to ensure that we never have to touch it again. So everything looks minty here. Jeff over at CW Pence was able to mark all the bolts. That's the technique showing you that everything is torqued to spec. And yeah, hopefully this is the last time that I have to see the bottom end of this motor. Besides, we are going to have to install the oil pump and some of the stuff down here. So I'll be showing you that along the way. We do have the motor taped off. Like I said, we're gonna be painting this motor actually. Gonna go probably for a couple of different colors, so two-tone. The engine looks super fresh though. I cannot wait to see how it's going to look inside the car. So now let's take a look at the heads. Now already you can tell that the heads were decked, or they were machined on the bottom face that's gonna be mated to the block. And that's to create a slightly higher compression ratio, but also to make sure that it's gonna mate well to the engine block. Here you can see the insanely huge exhaust and intake ports on this motor. So Jeff and I discussed the possibility of doing a port and polish on the heads and decided against it. So we decided that the overall cost of port and polishing the headers wasn't worth the performance gains that we would get out of it. So we're just gonna stick with possibly doing headers in the future. So now I've showed you everything with the motor, including everything that's already been done to it, as well as what we're planning to do to it. So we're gonna paint this motor black and gold in the next episode, as well as take care of the differential bushings on the wagon so that we can get this rear subframe into the car and put it back on the ground and kind of get an idea of how this is all gonna play together. So stay tuned, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.